If you're new to our channel, we'd love to have you join our little community. Just hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. We promise it will be worth your while.
Steve was a young troublemaker on the football field. He had grown up in a children's home, but everything changed when he moved in with Jill, a childless widow, and Steve transformed into a lovely girl named Samantha. After that, everything went in a completely different direction. Jill Withers lived in a residence that was set back from the primary New Forest Road. She was a stunning professional writer in her early 40s and had been a widow for the past 5 years when her spouse passed away. She had been living alone ever since. She didn't have any children, so she often struggled with feelings of depression and loneliness. However, the world only saw her courageous smile. She occasionally took in troubled children and fostered them. She had a good track record of success with this endeavor, and it also brought in a little bit of extra cash, which assisted her in bridging the gap in her finances. There was a ring at the telephone. Jill recognized the voice as belonging to the community social worker Jeffrey Griffin when she heard him say, "Hello, Jill. I have a case for you, if you are interested in looking into it." A young delinquent by the name of Steve Bell, who was 16 years old at the time. While he is still staying at the orphanage, they are getting ready to kick him out. My appearance in court today resulted in a fine of P200 because of the violent behavior I displayed while playing football. He gives off the impression of being a cherub, but in reality, he is a real little mischief maker. Jill wanted to know if there were any crimes committed against women. She emphasized that she did not want to on her hands. Nothing of the sort. It's all for football. I'm not entirely certain whether they are manifestations of confused loyalty or of frustrated rage. You will be able to look at the case file if you come to my office. When she arrived, Jeffrey was there to greet her, lead her inside, and hand off Steve's case file to her. Jill opened the file and saw the following information. Steve Bell, age 18. British nationality. The evidence was very disappointing. Steve was a talented football hooligan who had been incarcerated for multiple offenses and was now on probation as a result of his criminal history. She said to Jeffrey, "This makes for some very depressing reading. Should he be taken from a second time, they have promised to demote him. They are losing both their patience and their window of opportunity." One of his peculiar characteristics is something that not many people are aware of. A young man who exhibited fear, sensitivity, and silence due to his condition. Jill, I'm sorry to say that I just don't get him at all. He is unwilling to let the general public in on a dirty little secret about himself because he is embarrassed by it. Jill insisted that she always have a private meeting with a client. When Steve Bell showed up, she was taken aback because he was thin and stood only 5 feet 4 inches tall. Not only was he attractive, but he would have been stunning if he had been a girl. If he had been a girl. What a squandered appearance you have, I tell you. While holding out the paperwork, Jill made a motion to indicate that Steve should take a seat. "Are you truly to blame for everything that's happened?" It appeared that Steve was ashamed. She said, "Yes, ma'am." "I'm Jill, not ma'am," she clarified. "Do you realize that the authorities will lock you up the following time, Steve?" "I suppose so." His shame was apparent to Jill. "Does it really matter?" "Really not. I am unemployed and homeless. Who would care?" he mused. "You're done then, aren't you? If you don't have hope, your life is almost finished, I mean." Steve only let out a sigh. "If you had the chance, Steve, your life might have been different." He gave her a curious look. "How?" "You'll stick by me and do my bidding. We go our separate ways, and you're on your own if you don't like me or I don't like you. What would I need to accomplish? Housework, a little gardening, and a few other tasks. We'll pay you." He gave her a close examination. "What do you gain from it, then?" "Enough money to pay your board, and fulfillment if you pass." "Satisfaction? That's just a joke." Although Jill could see Steve's desire to believe, he remained dubious. The file was placed on the desk by Jill. "I could be your last chance, Steve. In 2 minutes, I walk out of this room with or without your response." "Is that what has to happen so you can get a manly reputation?" I asked. "One day you could fight and kill someone." Jill moved her chair back and made her way outside. Quietly, he said, "I'll come." 2 days later, Steve arrived at the house and was taken aback by its size. Jill greeted him at the door with a smile and led him into the lounge, which was serene and calm. It appeared as though a weight had been removed from his shoulders. Jill observed her new roommate. He somehow seemed even more attractive and defenseless than before. She wanted to snag him and give him a motherly hug because of the longing, pain, and sadness in his eyes. Jill was astounded at how Steve could amuse himself. He changed drastically a few days after arriving. Jill thought that he was withholding something from her despite the fact that he was thoughtful and surprisingly sensitive. Steve was generally quite frank, but something clearly bothered him. One morning, Jill was on her way to the city when she realized she had left her bank ATM card at home. She muttered an expletive before turning around. She could hear Steve's record player as she got out of the car. She reasoned that she didn't need to bother him and would simply go to her room to get her card before returning to the shops. She flung open the door and then froze in shock. Steve was there, dressed exactly as she had left him, but with her high heels on. His fairly long hair was pulled back into a ponytail by a big pink bow. She noticed right away that when he turned around, he had a stunning girl's face on. As she walked to the bed and sat down, she was out of breath. Steve gave her a mouth-opening look. Jill regained her composure and saw that he was scared. It was clear what Steve had been hiding from her all along. He had been blossoming like a lovely flower over the past few weeks, giving her subtle cues that she ought to have picked up on. She sighed and said, "I think you'd better put some coffee on." "I'll wipe this off," Steve murmured. "No, keep going as you are." "I'll meet you in the lobby," she said. "Griffin." "Are you going to tell him?" Steve questioned anxiously. "I won't take any action until we have a conversation." She observed him leave the room and laughed at how his bottom wiggled like a girl's in her high heels. Jill regained her composure from her initial shock and headed downstairs. Because of the heels on his shoes, Steve entered the living room while carefully balancing a tray of coffee. Jill was astounded at how much just a little makeup had altered him. She pondered what would occur if he wore a dress. How did she not see it earlier? Her womanly intuition, which she usually took great pride in, had failed her in this situation. She attempted to sound relaxed as she questioned, "Well, are you going to be completely honest with me?" After inhaling deeply, Steve stopped talking. Finally, he said, "I don't think I can." "Steve, you've got to. I will be forced to send you back to Jeffrey Griffin if you don't. More importantly, you need to free your soul for your own good. Give me a chance to assist you. Believe in me." Steve questioned, "What will you tell Griffin?" "Not yet. Not until we figure everything out." She was able to gather herself. "I'm going to town. It'll be a few hours or so," said the speaker. Jill was in town for almost 4 hours. She was carrying many packages when she came back. She asked for assistance in carrying these upstairs. As she placed the packages on the bed, Jill sighed. She struggled to appear natural as she dug through her bags and emerged with a high-legged teddy dressed in royal blue silk and trimmed with inch-wide lace. There was a bra and a pair of pants that matched. Steve said, "I'll go and clean up the garbage area." Jill grinned. He was clearly embarrassed because he thought he was unpacking her underwear. "No, Steve, stay here," she said in what she hoped sounded like a natural voice. "These are for you." Jill pulled out a black skirt and a white polo-necked wool top. Steve remained frozen and startled. What if everything was a mistake or a fantasy, he pondered. There is only one way to learn the truth, right, Steve? As she spoke, Jill threw him a pair of high-end tights. "Put on your bra, pants, tights, and teddy bear in that order. Instead of pulling, roll the tights up your legs." "Call me when you've finished that," I said. After turning around, she left her room. Steve experienced anxiety and butterflies in his stomach. Although he was afraid, he wanted to put on the clothes. He experienced a strange excitement as he found himself stripping off his clothes, though. He was astonished by how silky and seductive the bra and pants felt. He stuffed tissues inside the bra cups. As he rolled the tights up his legs and into place, they felt seductively gentle and erotically electric. He felt sensual, but more than that, he felt feminine because the teddy concealed the bra cup's filling. Jill grinned as she entered the room. "It's perfect for you," she said. Now that all signs of masculinity were concealed, Steve's shape was unmistakably feminine thanks to the padded bra. She gave him the slip before assisting him in donning the sleeveless jumper. She then wrapped the belt made of wide black leather around him and fastened it. He slipped on the 3-inch heeled white shoes. After that, Jill made him up by demonstrating how to use lipstick, eyeliner, eyeshadow, mascara, and foundation. Before coating his cracked nails with 2 coats of varnish, she gave them a feminine shape. She highlighted and curled Steve's hair in a very feminine manner in spite of his feeble protests. Steve became concerned when she lit a candle and started to warm a needle. Jill took hold of a cork. She murmured, "Sit still." She quickly pierced one of his ears by inserting the cork behind the earlobe, and then doing the same to the other ear. She inserted sleepers in Steve's newly pierced ears, while he yelped in pain and shock and ignored his unladylike curses. Finally, she put a silver bracelet on each wrist and a choker necklace around Steve's neck. She led Steve to the mirror while holding his hand. He asked, his voice becoming softer, "Is this really me?" "Yes, that is you. I'm going to risk everything for you, Steve. You will embody the girl you envision yourself to be for a month. The only way you will know whether your feelings are real is to live them out, the saying goes, because being a girl is full-time, not just when you feel like it." She gathered the cosmetics, the handbag, and the stylish jacket. "Bring these to your room, please." When Steve turned to face the window, it was already dusk. He carefully opened a carrier bag and took out a negligee, 2 matching pairs of underwear, and a wrap. More knickers and 2 bras were also present. While preparing dinner, Jill listened for footsteps on the stairs. She grinned as Steve entered the kitchen and sat at the table in an almost dainty manner. Ladies tend to eat more slowly, with smaller mouthfuls and with more delicate chewing habits. There are certain ways ladies sit, Steve, with their legs together or crossed. Throughout the course of the meal, Steve was corrected, which caused him to blush a little. They were sitting in the living room after dinner when Jill gave Steve a close inspection. "These are the rules, all right. Since I can no longer call you Steve, your name will now be Samantha. We'll visit the mall tomorrow to select some additional clothing. You'll spend an hour cleaning and doing chores before we get back." Jill turned to face the pouting woman who had her legs crossed and her arms delicately resting in her lap. It was difficult to think that this girl could be Steve. "We'll practice making clothes and typing. I'm confident you'll get the hang of it. You may be beautiful, but femininity is more than just sitting pretty. If you decide you love this life, you will need a job," the woman says as she welcomes you into her world. Eventually, Steve said, "Jill, I'm afraid." Squeezing the hand that was in Samantha's lap, Jill touched it. "But, Samantha, isn't this what you wanted?" "Learn to feel and be yourself. Learn to let your soul take over." Samantha? It wasn't too bad, really. He would need to view himself in that way. If he told someone his name was Steve while dressed like this, he would look ridiculous. "Jill, thank you," he said. Jill grinned. "Get some rest and go to bed. Tomorrow is a huge day for you." And that's a wrap for the first part of the story. We hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see what happens next, give this video a like and help us reach 500 likes. Once we reach that goal, we'll release the next part of the story. But if you can't wait, head over to our Patreon page to have early access to the rest of the story. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.